My kids abandoned me in a nursing home on Christmas, effectively firing me from my role as their mother. They told me I was a burden. So I decided to hire a new family, a family that offers unconditional love, slobbery kisses, and is eternally grateful for a warm bed. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Teresa Jones, and at 74, my life had become a collection of quiet rituals. The way the morning sun slanted through my kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The familiar weight of my late husband Robert's favorite armchair. The sweet, earthy smell of the soil as I tended to my small garden. And most cherished of all, the annual ritual of Christmas Eve, when my small quiet house would, for one magical night, be filled with the boisterous, chaotic love of my family. This year I had been preparing for weeks. The good silver was polished, the heirloom tablecloth was laundered and pressed, and the scent of gingerbread and pine filled the air. My children, David, 48, and Karen, 45, were due to arrive with their families in the late afternoon. I pictured the grandchildren's faces, alight with the magic of the holiday, the sound of their laughter echoing through the halls. It was this vision that sustained me through the long, quiet months of the year. They arrived earlier than expected, just after noon, not with armfuls of presents and festive cheer, but with strange, strained expressions on their faces. David, my usually easygoing son, looked uncomfortable, his gaze not quite meeting mine. Karen, always the more pragmatic and, I had begun to realize, more manipulative of the two, wore a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Mom," Karen began, her voice a symphony of false concern as she took my hands in her cold ones. "You've been working so hard. Look at you, you're exhausted. David and I were just saying you've overdone it again." "Nonsense," I said with a laugh, gesturing around my festive living room. "It's Christmas. It's my greatest joy." We know," David chimed in, still looking at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder. "But you deserve a break, Mom. A real one. So, we've arranged a little surprise for you." Karen beamed, her smile widening. "We've booked you a surprise luxury respite weekend. At that new place, the Orchard Wellness Hotel, just outside the city. It's magnificent. Spas, gourmet meals, beautiful gardens, a place for you to truly relax and be pampered. It's our Christmas gift to you." I stared at them, my own smile faltering. "A hotel? On Christmas Eve? But what about dinner? The grandchildren? I've cooked everything." "Oh, we'll handle it, Mom," David said quickly. "We'll just have a simple, quiet dinner here tonight, and then tomorrow morning first thing we'll pick you up and bring you back for the big present opening and Christmas dinner. This is just for tonight to give you a real rest. You deserve it. You're always taking care of everyone else." His words, meant to be loving, felt wrong. A cold knot of confusion and unease began to form in my stomach. To leave my own home on Christmas Eve, to miss the quiet, magical anticipation of Christmas morning with my grandchildren, it felt like a betrayal of every tradition I held dear. But I looked at their expectant faces, at Karen's insistent smile, at David's pleading eyes, and my own lifetime of putting their happiness before my own kicked in. To refuse would be to seem ungrateful, to cause a scene, to ruin the holiday with my stubbornness, a word Karen was increasingly fond of using when I didn't immediately comply with her wishes. "Well," I said, my voice hesitant, "it does sound lovely. If you're sure you can manage here without me." "Of course we can," Karen trilled, already bustling me towards my bedroom. "Now just pack a small overnight bag. Your suite is waiting." The drive to the orchard was a blur. They chattered about their work, their friends, their holiday plans, a bright, brittle wall of conversation that left no room for my own swirling thoughts. The building, when we pulled up, was indeed elegant, a stately brick structure with manicured lawns, but it had a strange, institutional air about it that didn't feel like a luxury hotel. They walked me to the front desk, a flurry of efficient goodbyes. "The receptionist has all your details, Mom," Karen said, giving me a quick air kiss that didn't land. "We'll be here to get you at 10 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Enjoy your rest. Merry Christmas." And then they were gone, leaving me standing in the quiet, antiseptic-smelling lobby. A woman in a nurse's uniform, not a hotel concierge, smiled at me from behind the desk. "Mrs. Jones," she said kindly. "We've been expecting you. Let me show you to your room." Room. Not suite. As she led me down a long, quiet corridor, past identical numbered doors, the cold knot of unease in my stomach hardened into a leaden weight of dawning horror. This wasn't a hotel. This wasn't a wellness retreat. The discreet signs on the wall read, "Evergreen Pines Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation." My son and my daughter had lied to me. They had checked me into a nursing home on Christmas Eve. My surprise luxury respite weekend was a cage, a place to store me, their inconvenient old mother, while they enjoyed the festive comforts of my home without the burden of having me there. The betrayal was so profound, so cold-blooded, it stole the very air from my lungs. I stood in the doorway of my small, sterile room, a place that smelled of bleach and quiet despair, and understood. This was my Christmas gift from my children. Abandonment. The door to my small beige room at Evergreen Pines clicked shut, the sound echoing the final brutal closing of a chapter in my life. The illusion of a loving, respectful family, an illusion I had so carefully nurtured, had been shattered. I stood there for a long time, my small overnight bag still clutched in my hand, my mind a chaotic whirl of disbelief and a grief so sharp it felt like a physical wound. A nursing home. They had put me in a nursing home. On Christmas Eve. I sank onto the edge of the stiff, narrow bed, its mattress covered in a crinkly plastic that whispered of sickness and indignity. The room was aggressively cheerful, a single sad-looking poinsettia on the windowsill, a generic "Happy Holidays" sign taped to the wall. It was a sterile, impersonal space, a room designed for the efficient management of the old and the infirm, not for a 74-year-old woman whose only ailment was a heart broken by her own children. That night was the longest of my life. Sleep was an impossibility. Every 15 minutes, it seemed, a nurse would bustle in, her shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor, to check my vitals, her professional cheerfulness a grating counterpoint to the raging storm within me. Outside my room, the hallway was filled with the sounds of a place where people come to fade away. The beep of medical equipment, the distant, mournful cries of a confused resident, the low, weary voices of the night staff. I thought of my own home just a few miles away. I pictured my grandchildren likely asleep in their beds, their hearts full of the magical anticipation of Christmas morning. I pictured David and Karen, perhaps sharing a glass of wine in my living room, relieved to have their burden out of the way, free to celebrate their perfect holiday without their old mother underfoot. Were they using my good china? Had they lit the fire in the hearth? The thought of them moving through my cherished space, their betrayal a poison seeping into the very walls, was an agony beyond words. Christmas morning dawned gray and joyless, the sun hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. I was woken early by another nurse, this one with a tray of lukewarm oatmeal and weak coffee. "Merry Christmas, dear," she chirped. I couldn't bring myself to respond. I tried calling them, of course. I used the old, sticky phone by the bedside, my fingers trembling as I dialed David's number. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "David, honey, it's Mom," I said, my voice cracking. I think there's been a terrible mistake. This isn't the hotel. It's a nursing home. You said you'd be here at 10. Please call me." I tried Karen next. Straight to voicemail. I left a similar, desperate message. The morning crawled by. 10 o'clock came and went. Then 11. Then noon. The hallway outside my room filled with the sounds of other families arriving, their arms laden with gifts, their cheerful greetings echoing with a painful irony. I sat by my window, a silent, forgotten ghost, watching other mothers, other grandmothers, being embraced by their loved ones. Each happy reunion was a fresh twist of the knife in my heart. A young aide brought me my Christmas lunch on a plastic tray. Dry turkey, lumpy mashed potatoes, a sad scoop of green beans. She looked at me with pity in her eyes. "No visitors today, Mrs. Jones?" she asked softly. I just shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The full, calculated cruelty of their act finally settled over me. This wasn't a mix-up. This wasn't them losing track of time. This was deliberate. They had lied to me, tricked me, and dumped me in this place with no intention of retrieving me on Christmas morning as they had so lovingly promised. They wanted me out of the way. They had used the holiday, a time of family and love, as a tool for their own selfish convenience, a way to have the comforts of my home without the inconvenience of me. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot flush that spread from my chest to my face. To be deemed so worthless, so burdensome by my own children, that they would orchestrate such a monstrous deceit. It was a betrayal of a magnitude I had never imagined. They hadn't just forgotten me, they had deliberately, cruelly discarded me. Late that afternoon, after hours of staring at the blank wall, my phone finally rang. It was David. "Mom," he said, his voice a flurry of feigned panic and apology. "Oh my God, Mom, I am so sorry. There was a terrible mix-up with the hotel booking. And then this morning little Timmy woke up with a fever and we've been dealing with that all day. We completely lost track of time. We're on our way to get you now." Lies. All of it. A clumsy, insulting patchwork of lies designed to cover their tracks, to manage the fallout of their cruel game. I could hear Karen in the background whispering frantically, "Did she buy it?" In that moment, something inside me, something that had been weeping and heartbroken, went very quiet. The part of me that had made excuses for them, that had clung to the hope of their love, simply died. It was replaced by a silence so cold, so profound, it was almost peaceful. "Don't trouble yourselves," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion, a stranger's voice. "I'm quite comfortable here. You just enjoy the rest of your holiday." And before he could respond, I hung up the phone. I sat there in the deepening twilight of my sterile room, the sad little poinsettia on the windowsill my only companion. My children had shown me their truth. They had shown me my value in their lives. And now I would have to decide what to do with that terrible, clarifying knowledge. The war for my dignity, I realized, had just begun. My children did eventually arrive at Evergreen Pines to retrieve me, 2 days after Christmas. They came armed with a large, garish bouquet of flowers and faces full of practiced theatrical remorse. Karen did most of the talking, her voice a symphony of cloying apologies about the terrible mix-up with the hotel booking, a story so full of holes it was laughable. David just stood behind her, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his eyes unable to meet mine, the picture of a guilty, spineless man. I let them talk. I listened to their clumsy, insulting lies with a quiet, unnerving calm that seemed to unsettle them more than any screaming rage would have. I was no longer the heartbroken, weeping mother they had left here. The woman who had checked out of Evergreen Pines that afternoon was someone different, someone they had never met. The 2 days I had spent in that sterile room, surrounded by the quiet desperation of other forgotten elders, had forged my sorrow into a cold, hard, unyielding resolve. When they had finally exhausted their litany of excuses, I simply said, "Take me home." The drive back to my house was thick with a tense, angry silence. They mistook my quiet for defeated acceptance, my composure for the resignation of a woman who knew her place. They had no idea that my mind was a whirlwind of activity, replaying their every lie, every casual act of cruelty, and beginning to formulate the architecture of my response. When we arrived at my bungalow, the remnants of their perfect Christmas were still evident. A few stray pine needles on the rug, the faint scent of a feast I had not been invited to share. They bustled around me, full of false concern. "Now, Mom, you just sit down and rest," Karen said, guiding me to my armchair. "We'll get you some tea. We feel just awful about all this." I watched them, my children, moving through my home, and I saw them not as my family, but as foreign invaders who had desecrated a sacred space. They had celebrated their joy in the very rooms where my heart had been breaking. Over the next few weeks, they tried to make it up to me with a flurry of superficial gestures. They brought me groceries. They called more often. They spoke of planning a special make-up Christmas for me. It was all a performance, a desperate attempt to smooth over their monstrous behavior, to lull me back into my familiar role as the quiet, accommodating mother. They needed me to forgive them, not for my sake but for theirs, so they could absolve themselves of their guilt and continue to benefit from my presence in their lives. But the woman they were trying to placate no longer existed. My grief for the relationship we once had was real and profound, but it was now overshadowed by a chilling clarity. They had shown me their true hearts. They had shown me that my comfort, my dignity, my presence at the most sacred of family holidays, was entirely disposable to them, a mere inconvenience to be managed. My house. This small, sturdy bungalow that was my sanctuary, my fortress of solitude, the only significant asset I had to my name. I saw the way they still looked at it, the way they talked about its potential, its value. I realized with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that the Christmas abandonment wasn't just about their convenience. It was a test. A trial run to see how easily I could be removed, how compliant I would be when they decided it was finally time for me to be permanently relocated so they could get their greedy hands on my property. That realization was the final, crucial catalyst. My hurt and anger, which had been a slow, simmering fire, now had a clear and specific target. My home, their anticipated inheritance. They had used my home as the stage for my humiliation. I would use it as the stage for my revenge. The idea began to form one lonely afternoon as I was watching a nature documentary. It was about birds, how some species will defend their nests with a surprising, almost comical ferocity against much larger predators. It sparked something in me. My plan couldn't be one of direct confrontation. A legal battle would be expensive, draining, and would only drag me further into their toxic drama. No. My revenge had to be something different. Something quiet, creative, and utterly, maddeningly irreversible. I thought about what they despised most. They hated my clutter. They rolled their eyes at my small, sentimental collections. They were obsessed with pristine, minimalist aesthetics, with a quiet, orderly life that looked good on social media. And they had a deep, almost visceral dislike for animals, especially dogs. They'd always complained about the neighbor's friendly golden retriever, about his smell, his shedding, the noise. A slow, deliberate smile, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months, spread across my face. My revenge would not be about taking something away from them. It would be about adding something to my own life, something they would find utterly, completely abhorrent. I would fill my home, their precious inheritance, with everything they couldn't stand. I would fill it with love, with chaos, with loyalty, with dogs. Not just any dogs. Old dogs. The forgotten ones. The ones like me who had been deemed too much trouble. My plan was set. I would disinherit them, yes. I would ban them from my property, absolutely. But that was just the legal framework. The true, living, breathing, barking revenge would be the creation of my sanctuary. The Teresa Jones Senior Dog Sanctuary. They had sent me to a home to be forgotten. I would turn my home into a place of remembrance, of care, of unconditional, slobbery, four-legged love. And in doing so, I would make their coveted inheritance an absolute, unsellable, and very, very noisy nightmare. With my plan solidified, a new sense of purpose propelled me through my days. The first order of business was to build a legal fortress around myself and my home, one so strong that not even my children's future tears or their inevitable legal challenges could breach it. I needed a lawyer, a good one, someone sharp enough to understand the nuances of my situation and tough enough to go up against whatever high-priced attorney my children might hire when they realized what I was doing. My late husband, Robert, had always had a saying, use the right tool for the right job. And for this job, the tool I needed was a man named Arthur Sterling, a lawyer I had only met once at a church fundraiser but whose reputation as a fierce, no-nonsense advocate for seniors was legendary in our community. I called his office, my voice calm and resolute. I explained in brief, clear terms that I was a 74-year-old widow seeking to make definitive and immediate changes to my will and estate plan in light of recent distressing family events. An appointment was scheduled for the following week. I spent that week gathering my ammunition. I collected my bank statements, my property deed solely in my name, a blessing from Robert's foresight years ago, and a small, neat notebook in which I had documented the events of my Christmas respite, including the dates, the lies they told, and the names of the staff at Evergreen Pines who could verify my presence there. Walking into Arthur Sterling's grand book-lined office felt like stepping into a different world, a world of power and consequence. He was a distinguished man with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. I told him everything. I told him about my children's growing dismissiveness, their lie about the luxury wellness retreat, my lonely Christmas morning in a nursing home, and their flimsy, insulting excuses upon their return. I told him, my voice cracking for the first time, about the deep, chilling realization that this was likely a trial run for them to permanently remove me from my home. He listened without interruption, his expression growing more grim with each word. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. Mrs. Jones, he said finally, his voice a low, angry rumble, what your children did is not just disrespectful. It is a textbook case of emotional abuse and potential conspiracy to commit financial elder fraud. Their actions are, frankly, monstrous. his validation, his immediate recognition of the severity of their betrayal, was a profound relief. I wasn't just being a sensitive old woman. I was a victim of a cruel and calculated plot. "I want to protect myself, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice firm again, "and my home. And I want to ensure that my children do not benefit from their cruelty." "We can certainly do that," he said, a small, predatory smile touching his lips. "We will make your wishes ironclad." We spent the next 2 hours mapping out my legal strategy. First, the will. My old will, a simple document that left my house and my savings to be divided equally between David and Karen, was to be revoked immediately. The new will was a work of art. Mr. Sterling suggested, and I agreed, that the best way to protect my legacy was to establish a formal trust. The Robert and Teresa Jones Trust for Senior Animal Welfare. Upon my death, my entire estate, the house, my savings, everything, would be transferred to this trust, to be managed by a neutral third party, my bank's trust department. The trust's sole purpose? To fund the ongoing operation of the senior dog sanctuary I intended to establish in my home. "And your children?" Mr. Sterling asked, his pen poised. "My children," I said, my voice cold, "will receive the sum of $1 each. And a letter, explaining in no uncertain terms that this is the direct consequence of their actions on Christmas Day. Next, the banishment. I want them barred from my property, Arthur," I said. "I no longer feel safe or at peace with them having access to my home." He nodded. "We will draft formal notices of trespass. They will state that David Jones and Karen Jones are no longer permitted on the property at 12 Maple Lane. We will have them served by a professional process server. If they violate it, they can be arrested." The thought was both terrifying and liberating. To legally bar my own children from their childhood home. But they had left me no choice. They had proven that their presence was a threat to my peace and my security. I signed the preliminary documents in his office that day. Walking out into the afternoon sun, I felt like a different woman. The weak, sad, heartbroken mother who had been dumped in a nursing home was gone. In her place was a woman with a plan, a legal team, and a righteous cause. The certified letters containing the trespass notices were delivered to David and Karen's homes the following week. The silence from their end was immediate and absolute. The weekly check-in calls stopped. The flimsy offers of help ceased. I had built a legal fortress around myself, and for the first time in a long time, my home felt truly safe. But my plan was only halfway complete. The fortress was built, the inheritance secured for a better purpose. Now it was time to fill my home not with the ghosts of their betrayal, but with the joyful, chaotic, loving presence of my new family. It was time to call the animal rescue. The week after the trespass notices were delivered and my new will was securely filed with my lawyer, Arthur Sterling, my house fell into a profound silence. It was a different kind of quiet from the lonely silence I had endured before. This was a silence of my own making, a peace I had fought for, a sanctuary fortified by legal documents and my own unshakable resolve. The fear of an unexpected visit from David or Karen, of another condescending lecture or a veiled threat, was gone. My home was truly mine again. But a fortress, I soon realized, can also feel like a prison if you're the only one in it. The time had come to fill my quiet house with life. Not the toxic, demanding life my children had tried to impose on me, but a life of simple, honest, unconditional love. My first call was to Eleanor James, the director of the Second Chance Senior Dog Rescue, a small local organization I had supported with modest donations for years. I had always admired their mission, to rescue older dogs from high-kill shelters, dogs that were often overlooked in favor of cute, cuddly puppies. The forgotten ones. The ones deemed too much trouble. I felt a deep kinship with them. "Eleanor," I said when she answered the phone, "it's Teresa Jones. I have a rather unusual proposition for you." I explained my situation not in detail, but simply that I was a 74-year-old widow in good health, living alone in a paid-off house with a securely fenced yard, and I wanted to turn my home into a registered foster home, a sanctuary specifically for senior dogs. I told her I had the financial means to support them, thanks to a recent change in my estate planning. There was a stunned, then delighted silence on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Jones." "Teresa," she finally said, her voice full of warmth, That is the most wonderful offer we have received all year. Our senior dogs are the hardest to place. They just need a soft bed and a warm heart for their golden years. We would be absolutely thrilled to partner with you." The process was surprisingly swift. They sent a volunteer to inspect my home who declared it perfect. I signed the foster agreements. And then a week later my new family began to arrive. The first was a three-legged beagle named Buster, with sad, soulful eyes and a tail that gave a tentative, hopeful thump-thump-thump against the floor. He had been abandoned by his family when they moved. He was followed by Sadie, a grand, arthritic golden retriever with a gentle, loving nature, whose owner had passed away. Then came two small, scruffy terriers named Fred and Ginger, who had been found wandering together and refused to be separated. Within a month I had 5 senior dogs, a chaotic, loving, furry family that filled my home with a new kind of energy. The transformation was immediate and profound. My quiet, tidy bungalow became a place of happy, gentle chaos. There were dog beds in the living room, water bowls in the kitchen, a collection of well-loved, squeaky toys scattered across the floor. The silence was replaced by the soft snores of Sadie, the occasional happy yaps of Fred and Ginger, the gentle click-clack of Buster's nails on the hardwood floor as he followed me from room to room, his tail now wagging with a steady, joyful rhythm. My days, once so long and empty, were now filled with purpose. There were morning walks, gentle ones for all our sakes, mealtimes, medication schedules for their arthritis, not mine, and long, quiet afternoons spent on the sofa, covered in a warm, breathing blanket of dogs. They didn't care if my clothes were old, if my laugh was a little loud, if my stories were repetitive. They just offered their quiet, constant, adoring companionship. Their love was simple, uncomplicated, and utterly unconditional. I used my savings, the money I had so carefully protected from my children's greed, to make my home a true sanctuary for them. I had a doggy door installed. I bought the best orthopedic beds. I stocked my pantry with high-quality senior dog food and an endless supply of treats. This was what my money was for now. Not for funding a lifestyle of entitlement, but for providing comfort and love to creatures who had been discarded just as I had been. The front yard, once a source of neighborhood pride for its pristine lawn, now sported a new, professionally made sign, firmly planted near the sidewalk. The Teresa and Robert Jones Sanctuary for Senior Hounds. It was my final, quiet declaration of independence, my most potent act of revenge. My children had wanted my house, my legacy. They had wanted to inherit this space, to fill it with their own modern, sterile aspirations. Now it was a home for old, shedding, sometimes smelly and utterly beloved dogs. It was a fortress of fur and unconditional love, a place their superficial, materialistic souls would find utterly undesirable. My revenge wasn't loud or angry. It was joyful, it was compassionate, and it was absolute. Life in my newly christened dog sanctuary was a beautiful, chaotic, and deeply healing routine. The quiet, lonely ache in my heart, the one left by my children's cruel abandonment, was being slowly, surely filled by the gentle, constant love of my 5 senior hounds. The memory of that dreadful Christmas morning in the nursing home began to fade, replaced by the happy reality of my new life. I knew, of course, that a confrontation with David and Karen was inevitable. My trespass notices had been a clear legal boundary, but I knew their greed and entitlement would eventually drive them to challenge it, to try and reason with the mother they thought they could still manipulate. It happened on a sunny Saturday afternoon about 2 months after I'd brought home my last dog. I was in the backyard throwing a soft ball for Buster when I saw them pull up to the curb. David and Karen. They got out of their expensive car, their faces a mixture of grim determination and barely concealed disgust as they took in the new sign on my front lawn, the Teresa and Robert Jones Sanctuary for Senior Hounds. I saw them hesitate at the front gate, which was now reinforced with a sign that read, "Please keep gate closed. Sanctuary residents at play." A chorus of welcoming barks erupted from inside the house as they approached the front door. I met them there, opening the door just a crack, my hand firmly on the knob, my body blocking the entrance. Sadie, my gentle golden retriever, padded up behind me, letting out a low, questioning woof. "Mom," David began, trying to peer past me into the house, his nose wrinkling slightly at the faint but unmistakable scent of dog. "We need to talk. What is all this?" The sign. "These animals." "This," I said calmly, my voice steady, "is my home, David. And these are my residents. My new family." Karen pushed forward, her face a mask of incredulous fury. A family? Mother, you have lost your mind. This is a kennel. It's unsanitary. You can't be serious. We came here to talk sense into you, to discuss your future, your estate. My future, I replied, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in front of them in what felt like an eternity, is quite full, as you can see. Full of love, loyalty, and companionship. Things that seem to have been in rather short supply from my human children. This is about the will, isn't it? David blurted out, his frustration finally boiling over. The lawyer sent us a notice. You cut us out. You can't do that. This house, this money, it's our inheritance. An inheritance, I said, my voice as cold and as clear as a winter morning, is not a right, David. It is a gift, a final testament of love and trust. And you both on Christmas Day proved yourselves utterly, completely unworthy of that gift. You left me in a nursing home to rot because you considered me a burden. You wanted my house, my assets, but not me. So I have made other arrangements. To leave it all to a bunch of mangy dogs? Karen shrieked, her voice cracking with disbelief. That's insane. We'll contest it. We'll have you declared incompetent. Will you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. On what grounds? That I choose to spend my own money in my own house on a cause that brings me immense joy? That I prefer the company of these loving, grateful creatures to that of my own ungrateful children who abandoned me when they thought I was a burden? I think you'll find that a judge will see my actions as perfectly rational. And my lawyer, Mr. Sterling, is very much looking forward to discussing your definition of incompetence in court, should you choose to go that route. He has a rather thick file on your recent behavior. They stared at me speechless. The fight, the arrogance seemed to drain out of them, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. They had lost. Completely. The inheritance they had coveted, the house they had seen as their birthright, was now and would forever be a sanctuary for old dogs. A place filled with shedding, barking, unconditional love. Everything they despised. It was a fortress they could never breach, an inheritance they could never claim. My home is no longer a place for you, I said softly, my final words to them a quiet, definitive statement of my new reality. It is a place of peace, of kindness, of second chances. Things you wouldn't understand. I closed the door gently in their stunned, furious faces, and turned the new, sturdy deadbolt. The barking inside turned from cautionary to joyful as I re-entered the living room. Buster limped over, nudging his head against my hand. Sadie rested her great, gray muzzle on my knee. I sank into my armchair, my new family gathered around me, my heart full. The humiliation for my children was complete and ongoing. Their friends, their community, would all hear the story. How old Teresa Jones, after her children dumped her in a nursing home, had left her entire fortune to a pack of old dogs. Their greed and cruelty had been met not with matching rage, but with a quiet, compassionate, and utterly unassailable act of love that had disinherited them more completely than any legal document ever could. My home was full. My heart was healing. And my life, surrounded by the slobbery, grateful kisses of my new family,